and decided to be black and happy. Not to be confused with black and forgiving or black and forgetful, and I know, to be happy and black in this country, you sometimes have to be a forgiving, forgetful fool. I am none of the three. Just today I decided to be happy because yesterday I wasn't. Yesterday, I was a colored girl considering suicide, but then changed my mind because if I was a colored girl, I'd probably have to plan my own funeral, carry my own casket, because no one takes care of colored girls but colored girls. Yesterday, I was a bloody hashtag. Being held by my would-be wife in a project staircase with he should have listened and compliance splattering the walls, and I feared for my life and the lives of my fellow officers, painting my steps Confederate flag red in the middle of Brooklyn. Yesterday, I was black and defeated, but today, I'm gonna be black and happy. Fresh biscuits out the oven on Sunday, happy. And my grandmother just got done eating her grits, watching Bobby Jones gospel on the TV, happy. Mixing diabetes and Kool-Aid. Diabetes and sweet tea. If you ever wondered why black people will put an amputations amount worth of sugar in everything, it's because we try to make this bullshit taste better. Trying to smile our way through this high blood pressure, so I gotta be happy. I mean, I have to be happy because yesterday I wasn't. Yesterday I was black and dilapidated. I was underfunded school. I was overpopulated prison. Yesterday, I mean, I couldn't get a mortgage. I mean, I paid too much for my mortgage. I mean, yesterday I was black and broken, but today I'm gonna be black and happy. Because I have to be. Because if you can be black in this country, you can be anything. And if you can wake up black and brown and poor and still have a smile on your face, you can take over the world. And all I want to do is be happy with my neighbor, Miss Lanzai. And she's going to cook for me. Say, Papi, you come home. Papi, you be safe. Papi, I made you arroz con dulces. And we're going to dance to merengue and bachata and sing songs that I don't know the words to. But we're going to be black and brown and poor and happy because I have to be. Because yesterday I wasn't. Yesterday I couldn't be. Yesterday I was a homeless queer teen of color. Looking for someone to love all the colors of my rainbow and not just the parts that made them feel comfortable. So I have to be happy because if I'm not, I'm gonna be black and mad, black and sad, black and knife, black and gun, black and if I ain't safe, ain't nobody leaving this motherfucker breathing. Okay. So I'ma smile, I'ma sing, I'ma be joyous, even if it's just for one day. Francis College, it is very rude of me to come up and start talking to you and not introduce myself. I was slightly raised better than that, so let me reintroduce myself or properly introduce myself. My name is Lynn Roberson. Y'all say hi back. This is the interactive experience. I know y'all had some moments you wanted to say something. This is an interactive experience. This is a community. Besides, there's roughly about 98 people in here. If you don't say anything, I can see you, so I can point you out. I have no quarrels with doing that. So my name is Lynn. Hey, thank you. I appreciate you. So my name is Lyn Robinson. I also go by the name Paragraph. I am a poet, performer, and also an educator. I am from a little slice of heaven called Harlem, New York. Funny story. I actually applied to St. Francis as a high school senior. I got accepted. But I couldn't go because I had to go to school further uptown. I went first went to Hostos, and I went to Lehman College to stay close to my grandmother because I'm a grandma's boy. And it's very sad to say that out loud, but I admit it. Now, we are here celebrating poetry in its realest form, in its deepest form, and its expression, and how it can save lives. I mean that, and I know that to be true. Writing can save lives. These are words that I live by. They have saved my life. They've seen other people's lives. Tonight, you're going to hear stories about people really changing their life. I'm going to do one more poem. Then we're going to get into this beautiful panel discussion. And once again, St. Francis, this is an interactive experience. The people up here can feel you. You can feel them. Give that energy and get it back. In these times when you need a level of community, things are scary outside. There is a crazy orange man with nuclear codes. So, if you hear something you appreciate, have some fun with it. Because we got to find some happiness and joy somewhere. Now, I'll do a poem. As I said, I'm from a little further uptown, called Harlem. And this is my poem for the place I love the most, and I'm sure someone can relate. I don't want to be rich. I just want to be able to live in Harlem. Unfortunately, I need to be rich to live in Harlem. Few things are more heartbreaking than when home becomes foreign. Childhood landmarks become ghost whispers of a time long ago, and you get found as a fossil in a cave of what once was. When everything you grew up with gets transformed into a Jeopardy category like, I'll take Conquered Black Neighborhoods for 100, Alex. As if real estate developers ain't been doing that for the last 10 years. When everything you are gets marginalized into a photo placed on the wall of a trendy coffee shop to let the patrons know they're getting an authentic taste of their neighborhood with their $6 latte. For $1,700 a month, $1,700 a month, you can get a studio. A studio. But you get Harlem's history. The beauty of its brownstones, easy travel to downtown Manhattan, and as an added bonus, when in conversations about race, you get to say, I know what I'm talking about, I lived in Harlem for a year. Get to tell your friends how cool and rare and special a chopped cheese is, what a steal $4 is, not realizing it's not a steal, it's affordable. Now realizing the difference between a steal and affordable is perspective, and how much that perspective can change. And 10 city blocks you never realized every time you raised rent, you still a laugh I had on 40th. A kiss I had on 2-9 from a girl who I got with on 2-5. And when you from Harlem, you don't say the one that comes understood. You see, few things are more beautiful than a Harlem Sunday morning. From the combination of McDonald's and blunt wraps on the floor to let you know how high and full on life we got last night, to the smell of biscuits and hymns in the air to let you know how high and holy we get during the day. But that's all starting to change because of tourist maps, book bags, cameras flash, all uptown for Sunday service or Sunday safari. Trading in African jungles for urban ones, looking at the native in its natural habitat, sucking all the gospel out the air. They say Harlem in a borough. I say they right. Say it's a world. And to the alien invaders, I'm not saying you can't come. I'm just saying we ain't going nowhere. This is not a race thing. This is a respect thing. When you walk into someone's home, you respect it. You wipe your feet, you wash your hands, and you say its name. So say Harlem. Say Harlem every time as if Adam Clayton Powell Jr. is watching every letter slide through your teeth. You say Harlem. Like if Malcolm X is in earshot, you say Harlem. You ain't gonna change our name into oblivion. You ain't gonna Morningside Heights us, Hamilton Heights us, Upper West Side us. You're not gonna do us like they did Brooklyn, Newark, Detroit. You're gonna have to say our name, and when you do, you gonna put some love on it. Enough love to light a candle for Rob Black and Drew Hamilton Project. You're gonna put some lights on it, like it's the Apollo Theater in full glory. But most of all, put some life on it. Like Harlem ain't memories, ain't history. It's walking, it's talking, it's breathing. But most of all, when you talk about my home, please put some respect on it. St. Francis College, I appreciate you and I thank you. You are here to hear amazing stories. You are here to understand that we are that people are humans, that people make mistakes, and that they grow and become better from those mistakes. And it is our responsibility as a society to integrate them back so they can be working members of society. And how do we get there? And we're here to get those questions and figure out those answers. With no further ado, please welcome Mr. Johnny Perez.
Let's show ladies some love again. So I go to Professor Horowitz and I said, you know what? I think that I want to have a conversation around incarceration, but I also very passionate about the arts. Passionate about painting and different forms of arts, but also most dear to my heart is the power of expression, poetry. I served 13 years and a total of about 8 or 9 different maximum state prisons. 2 of them in medium correctional facilities in New York State. And one of the things that really freed me was actually to be able to discover my poetic voice. Inside of my journal, there were places and things that it was a place where I can say things that I couldn't say out loud inside of a prison. If you've never been inside of a prison, you'll soon realize that there are things you just can't tell other people. I mean, You can't even tell people in society that. But certain things will actually place you at a higher likelihood of being victimized inside of those prison walls, and not always necessarily at the hands of the other people who are doing time. So here it is, I'm 21 years old, sentenced to 15 years to go upstate for robbery, which later on, after I went to class in school, I came to realize that it was actually a reaction to poverty. And I found myself inside of this cell, a cell that was so small, I used to stretch both of my hands out and I can touch both walls of the cell. That's how small it was. I'm 6 feet tall, so when I used to lay on the bed, my feet used to hang off the corner of the bed. And there were things that I was going through, things that I was even trying to discover about myself that I could not tell anyone. But I can tell my journey. You know, I can allow, you know, there were times when I couldn't cry, I couldn't let nobody see me cry because you gotta man up, you gotta be tough. But Lord, did my pen cry. In fact, my pen cried so much, I filled an entire book of poems. These are poems that I wrote while I was incarcerated, and I met some very wonderful human beings during that journey. One of which who's actually my best friend now, Sean Dalpiaz, was here with me today too. And I said, well, you know, I'm curious if my experience is unique to me. You know, was I the only person who found the power of expression within those walls? And as I started to talk to people and find out more about their experiences, I found out that they also found solace where before, you know, it was just foreign to them. The power of writing and the power of finding, the power of the creative power of expression was so freeing for people that it came to one point where, you know, other people were in prison, but we were sort of like in a university in a sense. We learned so much from each other. We engaged each other a whole lot differently. And then when we discovered education behind those walls, the entire world blew up. Our conversations even changed. Right? We went from talking to about, like, you know, how much money Jay-Z and Puff Daddy has, you know, to what would Karl Marx say about this? Oh, I bet you 1,000 push-ups, you know, if you can break down some, I don't know, laissez-faire policy or something like that. You know, and as a result, we ended up kind of insulating ourselves to a lot of prison politics that actually happen in a lot of different prisons. You know, and of course now today we're all professionals in our field. You know, but when we think back, sometimes, you know, we kick it back and just sit down and have a beer. And like, wow, I wonder what was the point in which, you know, our time. Yes, we knew we were doing time, but it kind of changed for us. You know, and that was when we actually discovered that power of expression. When we actually discovered the transformative power of education behind those walls. And for a lot of us, we always wonder, how was it possible that these professors would come in to try to teach us, including Carol Benson, who actually helped us, you know, discover our poetic voice. You know, here it is, we're trying to get out. And these professors are trying to kick in the door, trying to get in. Doesn't make sense. And I remember asking Brinson one time, I said, why do you keep coming here? He said, you. And I think that was an epiphanous moment for me when I said, wow, this person believes in me more than I believe in myself. What makes him think that I am so worthy to want to come in here and educate me and teach me about a world that was very foreign to me? Because before I was arrested, my world was really a 20-block radius in the Bronx. And for the first time in 4 years since I've been home, I actually went there the other day, and it was completely different, except that some of the same people, the same conditions still exist, you know? And I said, well, you know, what if the general public knew that these kind of things happen behind these walls? You know, what if the general public knew some of these interactions, you know, how people have come to form a relationship with language, right? Because language is so powerful. When somebody comes home, or we find out that somebody did time in prison, right, what do we call them? Anyone.
Criminal.
Ex-con, criminal, right? Felons, right? Outcasts, yes, right? Check out the power of language, right? Because there are things that I can do to a criminal that I can't do to somebody's daughter, even though those two might be one and the same. There's things that I can do to a convict that I can't do to somebody's grandson, although it's one and two and the same. So you're more likely to accept a policy if it's for the criminal, for that jailbird, for that ex-con. But God, let's not treat somebody's granddaughter like that. We can't do that. You know, and that's just one really great example how, you know, before we can allow ourselves to treat people a certain way, we have to dehumanize them first to give ourselves permission to treat them a certain way, right? And then, of course, what does that say about us? You know, so there's so much power in language, you know, and power in the way in which we express ourselves, you know, that it actually can shape the way that you even see people by how you describe them. You know, if you perceive someone a certain way, you know, you're more likely to treat them a certain way also. And language has that power. but also being able to express yourself. If you don't know, you can probably imagine, inside of a correctional institution, you have to have the ability to diffuse situations. You have to have the ability to communicate. You have to have the ability to handle things diplomatically. You can't just punch people in the face when they don't agree with you. You're going to end up in solitary, like some of us have, or not, or you just end up there for a long time. I can tell you the number of people that I've met who have gone to prison with 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and have ended up there for 10, 15, 18 life because of the time that they've received while they were incarcerated. And at the root cause of that is just not having the skills, being afforded the skills to be able to express yourself and navigate conflict in a pro-social way. So today what I want to do is, I brought in some folks. One bailed out on me, she couldn't get a babysitter, and we understand how that works. And the other person should be on their way. But I actually called on people who had direct experience with incarceration, who did time, right? Who are not afraid of expressing their journey, sharing their journey, right? But we want to look at their journey through the lens of expression and how much of an impact did that have on these people, not only in the way that they did time and before, but also in how it even shaped their views of the world and how now they engage in the world. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Great. Anyone have any questions? Great. You have one. Go ahead.
Just
to the mic? Oh. Oh, thank you. Okay. I'll turn it on.
Yes.
Okay. That's not really a question. I appreciate that. Is that good? Oh, this makes me sound sexy. Welcome to St. Francis College. Hey, Roy. Come in here, Roy and Nate. Yes, thank you. Y'all late, so we're going to clap for y'all. We're going to put you on the spot. Thank y'all for coming. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right on time, actually. I was just talking shit about you. So I want to invite up Sean Dalpiaz, Lazaro Lugo, and Natficial Fellowmen. Please come up. Thanks. So can we take a quick moment to briefly introduce yourselves to folks so people know exactly who you are outside of what the context that I just mentioned?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lazaro Lugo. I'm a published artist, a thespian, and a passionate writer, and I'm also a returning citizen. I'm actually a freshman here at St. Francis College. I thank all of you for coming out and supporting us tonight, and it's definitely a pleasure to be here. 1995, as a teenager, I took a wrong turn, one out of many, that landed me in prison for 21 years, and I'm just returning. The gracious part about it is that I walk around St. Francis, and I'm around so many wonderful people. I'm meeting new people every day. And just tonight, one of my classes is here, graciously, thanks to our Professor Sedeno. And for the first time, a lot of them are getting to know that I'm a returning citizen who sits next to you in class. And you know, the atmosphere is wonderful. So with that being said, thanks again.
Hello. All right. Hey, sorry. I want to apologize to Johnny Perez. I was late. I'm sorry, everybody. I apologize. I was late. The trains, you know how the MTA is. I'm sorry.
We're all New Yorkers. We already know. You're good.
So yeah, my name is Nat. My name is Nathaniel Williams. Right. So I did 7 years for car theft, auto, grand theft auto. You know, cocaine, selling cocaine. I did 7 years from '96 to 2001. And came home and I transitioned into this thing, beautiful thing called poetry. And I was writing poetry inside solitary confinement at the time. And I just fell in love with it, And I've been home ever since. You know, I've been doing well. It just took me a long time to get to where I want to be. So now I'm here with Johnny Perez. I'm at the St. Francis Louis, but you know, this beautiful poets here, man. I'm just happy to be here. What I do in my spare time, I volunteer for homeless shelters. I work at CBS Radio, you know, in the mailroom, you know, make some good money there. Until like I really want to make, like, until I really how should I say, make money with the poetry and stuff like that, I'll leave my job. But that's something I love doing on the side and stuff like that. But I appreciate Johnny Perez, man. Ever since I met him, it's been nothing but love. And brothers like Roy, they inspire me, man. So they always, when you see brothers like that come back into society and owning businesses and stuff like that, it's really inspiring to me. So anybody out there, you always get a second chance at life. Just don't take it for granted. Natficial Fellowmen. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sean, as Johnny said. I came to this event. Quickly, a little bit about me. Johnny sent emails like, send me a couple sentences, how you want to be introduced, and I said, you can introduce me however you want. Spent about 8 years in prison. That's where I met Johnny. Probably about 4 of those years we were together. Yeah. Right? Maybe 4 going on 5. Been home for about 8 years. I currently work in a foster care agency, so I'm a program director for a program that serves runaway homeless youth in New York City. So I have the largest residential program for runaway homeless youth in New York City and in New York State, with 6 residences, with 111 kids in 6 buildings, and a drop-in center. That's what I do full-time. Outside of that, I have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old child that takes a lot of my time. Yeah, they're cute in pictures, that's about it. And then anytime it has to do with poetry, for me, the ability, we're talking about incarceration, for me to be where I am today and to come home with the state of mind that I have now, a big credit is not to the, the euphemism that is a correctional facility, that is a penitentiary, right? Just with the name correctional facility. Poetry and creative writing, and a woman by the name of Cara Benson was the one thing that held my sanity while I was there, because by any standard, I wasn't the most sane prisoner until I got to poetry. Right. And if that intervention didn't exist, then this today wouldn't exist. Right? So I really appreciate conversations like this when we mesh the arts and you mesh. Nat said second chances. I had like 3, 4, 5. I think I'm like a cat. Right? And thank God, poetry came on my 9th life, and it's allowed me to get right and be here with y'all tonight. All right, so thank you.
Thank you. So the way that I envision this working was that I'll ask a question, you have about a minute or so to answer, and then in relation to that question, I want to invite you up to the microphone and share a piece. So we can talk, share a piece, talk, share a piece, and we'll do that for about 3 times. So the first question that I have for y'all is, how was your relationship to writing prior to being incarcerated? So before you went to prison, before you were arrested, if you can think about what was your relationship to writing and being able to express yourself then. Anyone can take that, and we can take turns.
All right, I'll start with this. Actually, 2 of my poems speak to this. But so my relationship with writing was, I like to joke and I say that I'm Irican, right? So my father's Puerto Rican, my mother's Irish, right? And however, there's a line in one of my poems where it says, I couldn't claim Rican without friction, so I claimed addiction. Right? Because I've always been too white to be Puerto Rican, right? But especially when my hair grows, too Puerto Rican to be white. So for me growing up, race has always been an issue. So one of the places I felt most safe was writing and on the page, right? So that's how, for me, from a very young age, writing became a very a big part of my life. If that makes sense. Go to Mike and do that.
I want to invite you over to share a piece.
So I'm grateful for Lynn. Where's Lynn? There he is. Good, how are you? I'm grateful for Lynn. That was the second time, actually tonight's the second time I saw Lynn perform. It's always a breath of fresh air. And really set the tone, right? I gotta take this out. I don't like being stationary. All right, so this poem here is called How I've Come to Know Writing. Within earshot of 1978, now mind you, I just turned 39, so like 40 is getting close, so I'll just tell you my age. Within the earshot of 1978, an NYU obstetrician sliced my ear. Your blood I shed, in a downward stroke to clip the umbilical, your heart stopped. I wailed like a clap of thunder, my first dislike. You held me softly, patting down my curly black hair. Within earshot of 1996, I graduated high school, not knowing much about anything outside of me. Within earshot of 1983, we made our way, you, me, and Hank, in a borrowed vehicle, loose handfuls of rain, our pomp and circumstance. Within earshot of me, 2 ebony workers toiled. One shouldered carpets, the other answered my NYs. Within earshot of 2004, Mommy tells me Grandma passed away. I lusted after all tears, instead a strangled spigot. Within earshot of 1998 or 1988, Bratty, Jackie, Jennifer, and I play ghosts in the graveyard, scraping our knees and relishing in the molasses of youth. Within earshot of 1984, I plop down in an empty house on a rolled-up carpet. Within earshot of 2009, it's still a strain. My soul's shroud refuses to drip. Within earshot of 1978, Enrique Martin Rodriguez stretched his neglect. Ahora mismo my mom wasn't alone. Some comfort is better than none at all. Within earshot of the mid-90s, I tasted a tanness. On nights like these, it still carries a grin. Within earshot of today, the British burnt down the White House. It's fitting for today's political times, right? Within earshot of today, the British burnt down the White House, and I, in this office, realized that I literally cannot stand you, and in that repulsion stands the implied me. Within earshot of 1986, I savored burnt and buttery nooks and crannies and black and white lily to plastered paternal appointments. Within earshot of the early 80s, I took precaution. Within earshot of tomorrow, we gaze from sawtooth shores of this wrong place for the right people. Within earshot of 2009, I am realizing it should not be hard to let go of anything if it does not define you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I started writing before, probably when I was 13. I couldn't really puzzle the words together. Like, I was just writing words. I would like study the dictionary, and I would just put words together and, you know, and try to make them rhyme. So my mother, she had bought me at the time, she brought me a rhyme dictionary. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It's called the Rhyme Dictionary, and she bought me that, and then I fell in love with that. So when I did my vacation time, I call it vacation, and I did the vacation time, and then I started really putting the dots together. I'm like, oh, this is really something I really want to do with my life, the rest of my life. This really, I want to inspire people. You know, this is really, really I want to do.
Before you go into your piece, I'm curious why you call it vacation time.
How I call it vacation time, because, you know, you go away. It's like I would say it's like college. Like, you go away, you learn trades. You know, I got my GED there. So I just call it college. It's like basically college. You serve 4 years, and then they give you all these accomplishments. I mean, that's why, that's my thing. I don't know.
It's okay. I'm not asking you to defend that. I was just curious for my own edification. Go ahead. You want to share a piece?
Yeah. So I wrote this. It's called, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. It's called 96R3249 Visiting Comstock. So this is like when I first got in. So I'm sorry. This is when I first got in. I was like, who's to blame for this thing called crime? We don't even receive a decent job, so we don't even have a dime. But the minute we steal a job and rob, But the minute we steal and rob in order to survive, they're hunting us down either dead or alive. When we try to be citizens, they refuse us the pleasure, which makes us not to give a damn, to use a different measure. The question is, why was we neglected from the beginning? Now that crime's involved, there seems to be no ending. Society is the reason for today's crime rate. They even have baby six through the prison gate. So a man without hope is a man without a dream. And without a dream, a man has no purpose. Sitting here in this jail cell, I write to keep my soul alive. So that's what I wrote that in the 90s. That was 1996 I wrote that, when I had entered Comstock Correctional Facility. And I remember that, you know, so that stick with me to this day. Thank you.
Okay, so I was a mischievous young man. I was the only child to a single parent, my mother. And I began writing very early. I began writing on the walls. I began writing in subway stations. I began writing in the hallways. And it became graffiti. It became graffiti. Laz.
Oh, that was you?
Yeah, actually, it was the Fortran. Yeah. I grew up in the Bronx, and writing for me was more of an art form. I grew up with an older generation before me, and at the time, graffiti was considered vandalism. But for us, it was an expression. You know, we wanted to scream to the world that we were there. We wanted to change the atmosphere of our community. And so my first poem is going to speak to that. It's going to speak to writing. So this is it. So the name of my first poem is called My Escape. Life, death, in between a dash. Makes so much sense why I always wanted to dash. To run, to fly, escape. I needed to escape. I had to escape. In this great city we call New York, in a small tenement building, in the Bronx, where I grew up, where I planned my escape, birthed by those days. Escape from the burnt buildings that surrounded me, the drugs, the violence, the poverty, the sirens, the roaches, the irony, that my mom worked 2 jobs to support us, but too busy to see me manifest the I in me. And still her unconditional love never ceased to see the light in me. And yet I escape to the late 80s and the early 90s, running through subway tunnels and up fire escapes and jumping from rooftop to rooftop in search of that place. A black book, a wall, a train is where I escape to the recesses of my brain. Visions of colors and shapes, dozens of cans of Krylon spray paint, determined to cover my world with images to erase the ugliness and the pain. To escape. I wanted to escape. I needed to escape. Graffiti and art was my escape. Yeah, school was great, and education is definitely a mandate, but my expression came through color-filled paint. It was and is how I relate. So as far as I can remember, my eyes have been filled with vibrant colors, and this dash called life is but a canvas, a masterpiece manifested to the end of my days, or recorded, and each stroke and image captured and rewarded, and still I escape.
Nice, thanks. The second question, you know, as you're, you know, so as you're doing your time, right, you're into your sentence, you know, you have a date, but you know that the date is not guaranteed, because if there's one thing that prison, you know, incarceration promises you is more incarceration. We know that you can get 2 years, you know that 2 years is really not 2 years until it really is 2 years. In other words, you know, your date is not solidified until you actually walk out of those gates, and it's like solidified. You know, during your incarceration, right, how did the power of discovering your poetic voice, or finding, you know, the power of expression through words and poetry, how or if and how did that change the way in which you did time?
Okay, I think I'll begin. You want to go? Okay. When I was sentenced, the judge looked at me. He made a statement. At that point in my life, I don't think I was mature enough to understand what he said, but he told me that I had no character, I had no integrity. And that haunted me for some time, because I really needed to understand the profoundness of what he was saying. That I had to be removed from society because I wasn't fit to be in society. And so when I began my period of incarceration, I was a teenager sentenced to 15 to life, with the possibility of parole upon that time. And so one of the first things I started to do, realizing and recognizing the damage that I had caused my family, was I began to express and to take responsibility for the damage that I had caused. And it was in that expression that I found my voice, because as a younger person, I had a hard time communicating. And one of the things that I had to learn very quickly was to communicate, because for those of you who haven't been, thankfully you're not privy to that experience, one of the things that you have to learn to do is process instruction. When you're being told to do, what to do, when to do it, every moment. Especially, you know, your first years, as you begin to get orientated with that whole process and having to accept the fact that you're going to live in an institution for a long time. And so I began my transition. I began reaching out. I began getting involved in workshops that were offered to us. And I began to really dive into my creativity, not only in the form of expression through word, but also through image. And I dove in and I began to use my words, and I began to use my art as a liberating factor to bring joy to people around me and to bring joy to others that I needed to heal. I needed them to heal, I needed to heal, and you know, that whole process. So for me, that's what it was.
You want to share a piece related to that?
Yeah, I would like to. I would just prefer to sit down if you don't mind. So this particular piece, when Johnny asked us to come on board on the panel, he asked us to retrieve, if possible, retrieve some of our work that we may have had. And in my transition, I've been several different places, so I had to, you know, go into the recesses of my mind and jot down some material that I had. So this particular poem is called Stop. Like a phoenix, like a phoenix, I rise from the ashes of a long journey in an abyss, a strange land. Stop. Shortcuts lead you nowhere. That's what they said. My mother, my uncle, rest in peace to the dead. Never really thought a nowhere existed, but it does. Nowhere. N-O. Unbeknownst to me, I created it in my mind long before I lived in it. Short-sighted, impatient, self-centered. I was imprisoned in my mind long before my physical body was. And then there I was, nowhere, dead smack in the middle of it, completely embedded. I'd arrived, no turning back, no point of return. So the story goes, a man is driving down the road and comes across a stop sign. As he approaches the stop sign, he looks both ways, down one intersection, down the other intersection, and realizes there's no oncoming traffic. Upon doing so, he slows down and continues down the road. About a half a mile later, he notices in his rearview mirror that there's a cop car with its sirens on, directing him to pull over. And so he pulls over, he complies. Officer gets out the vehicle, walks over to the window, asks for license and registration. He gives the officer his license and registration, asks the officer what was the reason he's being pulled over. And the officer presents him with the scenario and says, I don't know if you noticed, but about a mile back, a half a mile back, there was a stop sign. And the stop sign, you didn't bother to stop. You just kept going by. And he says, oh, officer, I looked both ways. There was no oncoming traffic. So the officer kindly asked him to get out the car. He begins to get anxious, and he complies. The officer asks him to put his hands on the hood of the car. So he does so, and all of a sudden the officer pulls out his baton and brings it down on the side of his neck. He falls to the ground in pain, looking up at the officer striking him with his baton. And he begins to scream in pain, stop. And the officer hits him a couple of times and then stops, looks in his eyes, and presents the question, do you want me to stop or do you want me to slow down? Somehow I had an epiphany. All my slowing down landed me nowhere. But I could escape. I had to escape once again. And I did. I escaped from nowhere, N-O-where, to nowhere. K-N-O-W. Know thyself. Knowledge of self. And so began my road to redemption, the written word, my expressions, the life-saving gift that keeps on giving when I learned to stop.
I got you. So the power of poetry while I was incarcerated, how to help my answers are pretty similar. I would say the same thing. You know, it's funny. Outside of what I do, I also do some adjunct teaching. I'm teaching a class called the Introduction to Social Systems, and we talk about ascribed status and achieved status, right? And I look at the environment that I was born into, and the effect of that environment, right? The trauma that was associated with that at a young age as an ascribed status, right? I didn't work to achieve that, right? That's not something I desired. Getting a graduate degree in public administration was something I desired, right? That's my achieved status, right? And, you know, that early trauma, I really believe, now being almost 40 and being a little bit more mature and able to look at things differently now that I'm educated, is I can see that played a major role in some of the decisions I made from a very young age that caused me to be incarcerated for a substantial amount of time in my life, right? And part of that realization came through creative writing, right? And be able to look at different topics and read, like the sociological imagination, right? Mills is sociological imagination. So being able to look at something from basically from a perspective that is not necessarily, you know, being more objective, right? And allowed me to look at the different angles to things and figure out how to heal from it. And once again, have a safe space to share my voice, right? No matter if Lieutenant Sheridan or CO, whoever was listening, right? So it was empowering, right? And it was unifying. And here's the other thing. I said my last question was, I always had issues with different folks growing up, no matter where I lived or who I was around. But some of the people in my lives, including family, the people who I'm closest to in my life right now are those who I was incarcerated with. It's just that simple, right? One of them, my best friend, Johnny Perez, right? I have family members that I'm nowhere near. I don't even talk to them, but they're blood. I didn't choose them, you know. So it's an interesting dynamic, right? So the poem I'm gonna read you is a poem called Unison.
You feel like standing up, or are you comfortable?
Yeah, yeah, I can stand. This poem is called Unison, and I speak to it because we used to do something called Speak Out at Mount McGregor, the last place I was incarcerated at. Can y'all hear me with this, without the mic?
Yeah.
Oh,
I like that without the mic.
I used to be running the audio visual guy right there.
All right, that's the pull up. I'll stay with the mic. All right, I'm receptive with change. All right. That's pretty good. He was on it. Unison. You see, Uni sung, and it's never been you and I, son. It's always been you and I and some other Sunday. On this Wednesday, it's all about unison. So Uni sung and I sent word, but was word sent when Poppy spent every cent of train fare on abandoning my welfare? You see, he spared me an answer, so this is how I coped. I copped dope, bought hope on consignment, stole some iron, and let off shots at the sirens of mommy verbal diamonds. Enrique had the nerve to chime in as he dozed on silence and confinement, spending time in Sing Sing in the Florida Bing. You see, before cancer dined on his spine, our last conversation went something along these lines. He said, "Mijo, there comes a time when you get so damn tired, when you get so damn uninspired that your words are no longer my day." I replied, "Why? Because you weren't a man today?" He said, "No, mijo, tú no eres un hombre." I said, "Yo soy un hombre hoy." He said, "Coño, my boy." I said, "Yo no entenderte." He said, "Por qué?" I said, "I forgot my Spanish today because you forgot my family yesterday. You see, I'm a man today, so mírame, for they kept me in the crooks of their righteous eyes. They beat me with telephone books and booked me as Caucasian. You see, it was a occasion for a mortician, a double homicide, and despite the yellow tape, my blood never lies. You see, Poppy pulled the trigger, piercing my left side. Bystanders filled the night. Bev said bye-bye to Poppy with a handful of ashes and a 2x4 glossy. Casito Jr. floated like a memory buried in the land of the Nuyorican. They mutilated Puerto Rican with their Caucasian consciousness. You see, it was an occasion that I can't conscious. I mean, I came famed, but I couldn't claim Rican without friction, so I claimed addiction. From magazine bags of junk to stuffed sugar bags of funk, I played peddling punks in big north and center yards. You see, it's never been in the cards, just my two hands. And even though we've come this far, I still got gods on earth and salsa kings stripped of their omnipotence and rings. I still got New York State Department of Corrections civilian dreamers with clipped wings, so it's no wonder why children refuse to sing their allegiance. Like many young gods on earth, since birth, I've been pledging allegiance to this united, fatherless state of ill manners. I pledged allegiance like red vengeance, baited the blue with prison sentence of lyrical hooks, hooked lessons of venom from Poppy with a small cannon jammed in his denim waistband. We both wasted bands of green on white heroin steam. You see, I pledged allegiance to malfeasance and resentments. The sentiment was mutual. We were both desperate for contentment. In allegiance I pledged to my father's ash, empty of resentment and resurrected with forgiveness. I forgave every nest and spangled my banner with the thick knotty dreads of unison. You see, like a father to a son, unison said, spangle your banner, my son, not with red stars, blue bandanas, or black and gold glamour, but rather spangle your banner with the forever fire of resistance to a system with pistons deeply rooted in the kitchens of our dysfunctional wishing. Like a father to a son, unison proceeded, spangle your banner with beautiful decisions for the beautiful children left in limbo, your kinfolk, for they are pledging allegiance to a star-spangled banner with prison, the pen, New York State Department of Corrections, the belly of the beast as its stronghold, with tears streaming and nightmare dreaming. Unison chose something to believe in. So brethren, from here on in, I shall begin each one of our conversations. Unison shall be the new age salutation. Peace.
Nice. Nice. Did y'all feel that? Yeah. That's like the power, right? When someone can say something in such a way which really grabs exactly how you feel, but you can't just put it into words. You have to like feel what the person's saying instead of hearing what the person is saying. Nat?
Yeah, so when I had entered the Comstock Correctional Facility, I contemplated suicide at the time. And I wanted to hang myself because I thought my life was over. And I reached out to a couple of family members. They never reached back. And one friend of mine, to this day, he reached back and he said, no, don't do it, brother. Like you have a purpose in life. So he reached out to me. And then he just reached out throughout the whole 7 years. He made sure I was okay. He made sure I had commissary. He made sure, he came and visit me. And he just kept me alive. And I just want to thank him for, getting me through my bid. So those one of the main reasons that kept me through the bid, through the 7 years. And like I said, I wanted to commit suicide, and he was like, no, you have a bigger purpose in life. Like your purpose is not to kill yourself. You're too young. You still got you still got your life ahead of you. You only got 82 months, so you still got the head of, your life. So I just want to share something with y'all. Oh, okay. All right. Y'all can hear me? I'm sorry. It's called Survival. For I feel at times that I don't have a purpose, contemplating suicide. Should I do it? Y'all can hear me, right? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right. I'm sorry. So it's called Survival, y'all. So it said, I was like, okay, I feel at times that I don't have a purpose, contemplating suicide. Should I do it? But I came to the conclusion I do have a purpose. Killing myself? Nah, that's just the easy way out. But these emotions are harder than being incarcerated. In a cage, walls, bars, fences, and gates. All these obstacles in my way. My heart pounds faster and faster, and hurts more each passing day. But I'm strong though. I only got 84 months to go, and I will survive.
You know something, that before I answer this question, I'm gonna share a piece that I wrote right after I really discovered, like really thinking differently about my environment. And this piece, I actually wrote this piece, this is June, this was June, it says June 05. And I'm not sure if that's June 5th or June 2005, because I did a lot of time. But in any case, it's a different type of poem, but just and really short. It's called Somewhere, Someplace. I crossed paths with a deer today. Mind you, I was in prison when I wrote this. I happened to cross paths with a deer today. Well, not really cross paths, more like came face to face. See, I was walking by a fence and there it was, eating grass, savoring every last piece of God's green earth. It seemed to be minding its own business, oblivious to my intrusive eyes. Oblivious to my intrusive eyes filled with curiosity and amazement at his bushy white tail and almond-shaped eyes. The growling of my stomach served as a reminder that I've never eaten deer before. I hear it tastes better than steak. Healthier too. I guess I'll try anything once. I mean, as long as it doesn't involve another man. It would be quite a change from our present diet, which is filled with exotic dishes with hard to pronounce names that taste like four-letter words that are easy to say, especially when I'm angry. I was startled when the deer looked up at me and suddenly aware of my presence. To my surprise, it didn't run or make any noise. It simply stopped chewing the grass that I can only imagine tastes just like grass. Nope. It didn't do anything but stare. Not like a stare that someone gives you when they catch you admiring them, no. This was more sympathetic. More like the look you give someone when you know something about them that he or she doesn't know, but you wish you can tell them, although you can't because you don't know exactly how they'll react to you. Yeah, that kind of stare. See, I could no longer bear it, so I moved my eyes in a different direction. Not out of fear. I mean, I'm not scared of shit. Well, maybe HIV, but I swear that's it. No. The reason I looked away was because right at that moment, at that exact second, I became aware of a startling reality. My startling reality. And for the first time in my short life, I was staring at a wild animal from the wrong side of the cage. That was also in a place where, I think I was in Mount McGregor, when I realized this animal is actually more free than I am, and I'm the one in the cage. And this animal, he or she, can go wherever they want. In fact, they have more choices and freedom over life than I have right now. The last question I want to ask is, I talk in my prior work. I worked as a reentry advocate for a place called the Urban Justice Center, which is a nonprofit law firm that provides civil legal services for underserved population. Hey, I never got that reaction from people when I said that. Like, oh, what is that again? And today, I'm in a different role now. I'm the Director of U.S. Prison Programs for a national campaign against torture, where I'm focused on solitary confinement, and my life has a lot of duality. I'm also a student here at St. Francis. I forgot to mention that before. Forgot that little tidbit. So reentry is really important to me, very near and dear to my heart, because I had my journey reentering was different than a lot of my peers, and each journey is really different, but also alike or unique, just like every other one, if that makes sense. I'm always curious about I'm always passionate about raising awareness about reentry and the hardships that people go through when they come back into society, right? So you go away, you do this time, right? How much time you did, Lazaro, again? 21, 7, 8, 13, right? That's a large chunk of time to be away, right? I think collectively that's over 30 years, probably 40. I'm not any mathematician, 40, thank you, right? Like 40 years of incarceration on this panel, right? And then you go back, 49, thank you, bro. You here with your teacher? Give this man extra credit. Thank you, man, I really appreciate that. No, thank you. 49 years, right? Almost half a century between just 4 people, right? And there's some things up here, it's something in common, right? We're all men of color, right? A woman was supposed to be here, but she couldn't make it. She was also a person of color, right? And I'm thinking about, now you come back. Now you discover the power of expression. You're thinking differently about your life. You have a greater understanding about the society that you live in and the choices that you made, and you're ready. Right? They drill into us. If you change your life, if you make better decisions, society's going to accept you. You paid your debt. Right? You're sorry. You're remorseful. You're done now. Of course, some of us had parole, which is another sentence, right? Some of us didn't, right? And you come back into society. What did that look like? And what role did expression play into that movie, if you will, or that view or whatever? And of course, feel free to share a piece connected with that, or you can stand up, sit down, whatever.
I think by far this question, when it was presented to me, was the most profound question, and I say that because at the time that I was incarcerated, my daughter's mother, my girlfriend, she was pregnant with my child. She was about 5 months pregnant, and I went away. And for me, the biggest obstacle, the biggest difficulty since I've been home has been solidifying and strengthening family ties. Just think for a moment and imagine your family learning to live without you for 2 decades. So they say that you cease to exist when the last person on this earth that knows you mentions your name. Not saying that I didn't have communication with family members, because I did, but it was sort of like brief. The people that you expect to be there for you when shit hits the fan are the ones that turn and run away. And the ones that you least expect are the ones that are by your side. So with that, I don't want to say a poem. I want to tell you just a small, brief story. So my daughter Alizé is about to be 22 in a couple of weeks. I seen Alizé grow up in pictures in the visiting room. 21 years, a grown woman. When I finally got the news that I was going to be released, my daughter had lost hope that I was ever coming home, and family lost hope that I was ever coming home. I had been to the state parole board to be reviewed for release 4 times, and 4 times I was neglected. And I had to wait another 2 years after every time I went. And every time I had to break the news to my daughter and to relatives. When I finally got the news, I got on the phone and I was so excited. And I said, babe, I gotta tell you something. She said, what, Dad? I said, I got great news, something we all been praying for. She's like, what's that? I said, I'm coming home. She said, stop playing with me. I said, Dad, stop playing. You joking, right? She lost hope. She had just accepted that my relationship with her was just gonna be in prison. I didn't mean to make the mood somber. It's just so close to my heart. And I just really need you to understand that, you know, what's near and dear to you, you cherish, and you try to make the best of it the best way you can. When I came up for my first parole board, and I'm going to end with this, I have a very, very, very close friend of mine. He seen my daughter grow up. Him and I went through the same experience. We were together. Right before my first parole board, I went down to the visiting room, and he went down to the visiting room with me, because I had other family members who came, so we went down. And I used to have this thing that my daughter would come and I would spend time with her and my family, but at least an hour and a half of the visit, I would move and go by myself with my daughter and spend time with her. So I did so that day, and my friend stood with my family. And I had to explain to my daughter what I was in for, because she thought that after the first 15 years that I was just going to be released. So I had to explain to her the dynamics. So she knew my friend. She was very close to him. He was like an uncle to her. And I said, Alizé, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to look over at my friend. And what do you think about him? So she was like, oh, he's great. You know, they play chess together. They've been, you know, friends. So she's like telling me how he's such a great person. I'm like, yeah, he is. I says, now I want you to do me a favor. I want you to think about the person you love the most in this world. And she goes, you. And I'm like, okay, besides myself. She's like, grandma, ma. I said, okay. I said, you see my friend standing there? I said, if he made a choice in his life, and as a result of his choice, your grandmother lost her life, do you think 15 years would be enough for him to be released? And with tears in her eyes, she looked at me and she said, no. I said, well, then 20 years? And she said, Dad, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. And I said, well, I just want you to know and understand that I made a choice as a young man, and as a result, another young man lost his life. And the same way you're feeling about the question I asked you, that man's family feels the same way about me. This society feels the same way about me. So I need you to prepare your heart and your mind to know that although I'm going to the parole board and I've changed, that there's still people who are hurt, and as a result of that, they might not release me. So I share that with you because forgiveness is a big thing. You have to forgive yourself first, especially under those conditions. And here I am back in the community, and you know what? My relationship with my daughter is good and it's bad. She's a grown woman. I'm getting to know her now on a whole different level, and she's getting to know me. The dynamics are different. But the reality of the situation is that I walk down the streets, and to many people who don't know me, I'm just the average person. And I communicate and socialize with people well. A lot of people who have met me since I returned home, they, you know, if they come upon that information, if I disclose that information about myself, a lot of people tell me I would have never thought that you've been through that experience. But thankfully, through the word of through expression, through word, through communication, through artwork, I was able to be resilient, and I was able to overcome those obstacles. And I'll leave you with this. This is the last thing I'm going to say is, when you go into that system, you have an option. You can reach out in the institutions and ask for help to help you cope. A lot of that help comes through way of medication, mental health, anxiety, stress, all those factors. And if you don't go to the medical line to get medication, you're considered abnormal because you can survive in an abnormal environment without having to depend on drugs. That's the reality. The reality is that if you adapt to that environment and you make it through without depending on drugs, mental health drugs, etc., then you're considered abnormal because you can't, you learn how to make it through. But thankfully, for the spoken word, creativity, expression is what helps a lot of men make it through that whole process. So with that, I just want to say thank you.
Just as a side note, the reason I asked him to repeat that, because I've met countless men when I used to work in the law library. People would actually be denied parole. So they'll say, well, you have a ton of misbehavior reports. You've been getting in trouble. You got to come back, give us a clean slate. But you give them enough clean slates where they're like, well, you've adapted so much to this environment that we don't know if you can survive in society. So therefore, you should stay. And you're like, what am I supposed to do here? So that's why I wanted to emphasize that, especially for the students in the room, the correctional students, criminal justice students, to understand, beyond the textbook, which we appreciate, but in practice, there's a lot of discretion that, correction officers, parole officers, administrative staff have over who gets to come out and who gets to stay and the reasons why.
I would say for me, the biggest adjustment has been, I think this will always change, specifically for, I guess, we all have a story and there's similarities, but there are also some differences, right? And part of my story is, I remember, is you know, any kind of influence is a threat, right, to a prison setting. So whether it's overwhelming positive or overwhelming negative influence is still considered a threat to the institution, right? That's the way security views it, right? And when you would think that positive would be, in essence, like a support to their work, right? So you'd think that would be something that they would welcome, right? But that's not the case. So for me, the biggest adjustment has been, I guess you could say, trusting individuals, or the ability to really let my guard down and developing relationships with people probably as easy as the next person, right? If that makes sense. Never mind if I'm in a loving relationship, I have 2 children, right? But that took work. That took work. Right, it just took work. I don't really accept people at face value. I have a very small circle that I deal with, and part of that is, I'll give you the quick example. Then I'll go into a poem, and the poem is called Calvin Klein Thoughts. And I call it Calvin Klein Thoughts is because a lot of it is don't kind of be deceived by the image, right? Fall in love with the reality. Don't be deceived by the image. And I remember when we were in Mount McGregor. Me and 4 other individuals are set up for weapons charges. Weapons were planted on us, and they weren't our weapons. And in a correctional setting, if you get caught with a weapon, especially in a medium, not necessarily, different environment medium, right? They'll take you to the local court and then charge you with another charge, and now your 2 9-year sentences, if I had 2 flat 9s, turn into, finish the 2 flat 9s, I'm not going to get the 85% good time. I'm going to have to max out on those 2 9s and then get the whatever time they give me for the weapon. So, yeah. All right, there we go. So do another 7. So it's going to turn to 16 with 5 years going home, too. So those experiences really shaped how I still view, especially, honestly, the NYPD. My programs are in Brooklyn and Queens, and I'm in East New York, Cypress Hills, every day, all day, and I'm driving around, and you talk about, they see me driving around, I get stopped by the 75th Precinct on a regular basis just because they look at my complexion and they say, oh, you in this neighborhood copping drugs. I just happen to be at a point now where I could navigate that situation as opposed to a couple of years ago where things sometimes went a little differently, right? But every time I see them, my heart starts fluttering. My anxiety kicks up. Right, so that's probably my biggest issue, or not issue, what I have to work on since I've been home. Huh? But meanwhile, if you check my work phone, you'll see a sergeant's phone number that I get text messages from because they respect what I do. All right, so this poem is called Calvin Klein Thoughts. All right. I feel out of place with convicts and civilians alike. You see, I save face by only coming out at night. A child of closure, I lie around, demolished and centerless, opening doors just to learn how to forget. You see, it's hard to forget when you've spent every cent of recollection against your mama's mantra of nothing one can pay cash for seems very valuable. You see, the threads of the greenest night tickle my forehead as the curtain of lost souls cleared my soul with the cash of lost consciousness. My soul seemed valuable, at least to my mother. However, the inner G.O.D. I traded for a longer than I expected C.O.D. transaction was denser than windy forest shelves cluttered by simple statues symbolically bowing to gods and goddesses of the earth and heart. Time stops. And the only thing that compels me is the air percolating into and out of the neck as the sun's heat rises and falls. My chest rises and subdues as the past paths of pleasure I crawled away from form over my resistance like a sweet but slippery dew. The dew shatters into rivulets on crunched cellophane, and instantaneously a rumble of intensity heightens. Groans of anguish and satisfaction break from the depths of the body, and I am dragged back to day one. At one point, day two seemed so far away that I thought I was invincible. Wealthy in every sense and nonsense of the word or world, my spirit was poverty, and if poverty has worked its way up into your knees, or you can't get your eyes dry, then you have arrived at hope. It took me months of grabbing the shirts of strangers standing nearby to remember what I learned when I learned about poetry. When did you learn about freedom? You see, to learn of freedom is to acknowledge slavery, and to learn of slavery is to acknowledge, whether indirectly or directly, someone else's addiction. And in addiction, addicts were sold cheaper than slaves, 1/3 cheaper. And in the distribution of misery, capitalism inevitably will spread its holy wings. And in the spread of sin, I realize that in your end is my beginning, and in your screaming, my silence cracks and creaks to the museums of our desecrations. You see, at the end of the tour, I want to see furrows of definition dug deep in the tablet of John Locke's original vision. Not the telephone game rendition of informational furrows of oral ambitions in opposition to the essence of those at the core of desecration. This type of venom cannot be sucked out by the irreverent injector and still save the face and the race of aunts and uncles with their histories blanked out. You see, it was an effort that went boundingly like ephemera at dusk. Its ring went hollow way before the ears of karma twitched in our direction. So many mothers tried to direct Sean. However, this addict never believed in the beauty. I mean true beauty, not beauty based on concrete, bloodied arms, tattooed tears, and bitter pasting paste on fire, bubbling in spoons that clear out packed rooms of the most torturous mind. True beauty, not backwards beauty based on roots, wet cardboard boxes, subway car pissy potpourri, and the repulsion of your own scent, but the beauty of L-O-V-E. All showing me that everything in our lives, having taken root in love, doesn't have to be meek. You see, I was heroin chic way before Calvin Klein promoted death on billboards. And beauty is so much in demand, it's a wonder natural selection hasn't thinned out anything not perfectly beautiful. You see, to me, Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here is beautiful. A few guitar chords causes me to think what it would be like to get every word in. Silence is beauty, and for 5 days I was beauty. Lips welded shut like a cocoon of calamity, mixing patience to feed the red roots of lineage leaving my fingertips. My fingernails are the bark that carves meaning into the wrinkles of age that have taught me to beware of the interests of the interested. Why have they encouraged you to think rather than just grow? Nature is not logic or knowledge or philosophy, so naturally, poetry is not logic or knowledge or philosophy. It is action and action's pleasure that was almost lost to Calvin Klein thoughts and the idleness of pretended feeling. Thank you, St. Francis.
Well, my reentry in society at the time, I think it was 2002. I came in, I went to the Covenant House. I had nowhere to go. My mother, she was in the shelter at the time, and I couldn't stay with her. I couldn't stay with no family members at the time, and I just had to figure it out on my own. Like a lot of family members, they didn't trust me around them because they thought I was still their card, like I was still selling drugs and stuff like that. And I really had to, prove to them, like, I'm not about that life no more. Like, I changed my life totally. And I went into the Covenant House as a transition. I don't know if everybody know about the Covenant House, but it kind of changed my life too. That was like transitional living. You work to get you a job, and you save money. You save $50 a week. So that kind of helped put my responsibilities in order too at the time. So I had transitioned out of Covenant House, and like I said, still family members at the time, they still didn't trust me around them. They didn't want me around or nothing. And until like probably 7 years ago, I reconnected back with my family members. They see me doing, these positive things now. But it's like, why it took that for them to see why you didn't, when I got out of prison, it's like I had nowhere to go. I had to go to the Covenant House. And I feel like, why it took them to see what I'm doing now, for them to accept me now. But now, to adjust now, being adjusted now, what I have a problem with, I still have a problem with this day, to this day. I still, don't laugh at me, I still wash out my socks in the shower. I wash them out in the shower and I wash my underwears. I still have that habit. I can't break it. It's just for some reason. But yeah, it's, I kind of saved some money too. So it's cool. Yeah. But it's just, I'm gonna leave y'all with this, like, you know, never take your life for granted. Sometimes people be in the wrong places at the wrong time, but you just you know, stay focused with your life and stay around positive people. That's, you know, you'll go a long way with that. So I'll leave y'all with that. Peace.
So, I know I saw a few hands. So I want to open it up to the audience. Do people have questions? Anything that comes to mind?
Just wanted to know how you guys managed to, you know, was it awkward? Did you feel like just out of place, and how did you transition emotionally, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely awkward for me. I grew up in the Bronx. I was an artist at a very young age, like I shared. My best friend's mother, Obi, God bless her, she cultivated my artwork. She held me accountable as a younger person, and she would make me do different art projects, and she helped me create a portfolio, and I submitted my portfolio and applications when I graduated out of high school. I submitted it to all the major art schools in New York City, and I got accepted to like 5 of them. And I decided to go to the high school for fashion industries. So I used to travel to school every day in the trains. But when I came out, after that long stretch, and I got on the train, I like started to lose my breath. Cause, you know, I got on rush hour, and I was feeling like, oh man, and then the system kind of like looked different, and I was trying to get back and forth. So, you know, I after like a week, it kind of like weaned away. But for the first couple of days, I had to jump on a train, go different places. It was like, it's definitely like a new experience. And then, you know, I had friends. I came home. I had an iPhone and stuff. So, and my friends were telling me, "Yo, don't pull out your iPhone on the train. You got people that snatch iPhones and stuff." So here it is. I'm on the train. I'm like this, looking at my iPhone and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, so it was, you know, it was an experience.
Yeah, when I went away, it was tokens. So, and then when I got, you know, when I got back, it was like, when I got out, you know, Port Authority, I had money, and then I tried to buy me a token. It was like, there's no more tokens no more. It's Metro cards. I'm like, no, I was just arguing with the token booth for like a good 20 minutes. Yeah. So it was really hard for me, like getting on a train, like you said, like, you know, people staring at you. It was like transparent bags I had at the time, and like just getting on the trains every day, people just staring at you, and you know, you feel uncomfortable, and a person stares at you after a while. It's like, okay, so it kind of. But now it's still hard to this day, because, you know, I still get on the train, people still look at me, and I just try to pay them no mind. But it's really hard. It's still hard to this day. It really is. So we just got to keep moving forward, though. You know, you can't let that, you know, get you, you know, where you want to go.
Yeah, my answer is the same. It was Bluetooth kind of freaked me out in the beginning, and text messages. I wouldn't text for whatever reason. I was like, I don't know what that's about. You know, I know what a phone call is. You can call me or I'll call you. And that's just what I did for a while. I just refused text. It was almost like if I opened a text, the phone was going to blow up. It didn't make any sense. But you know, I quickly got out of that and got a Facebook page and all that good stuff.
Thank you.
Mr. MySpace.
Yeah. Next question.
I guess my question is, what kept y'all from going, oh my bad, what kept y'all from going deeper into your criminal education, basically, than to what you're doing now? Because y'all had two paths, right? You could either like join a gang, you know, like really get into it, or y'all can do what you're doing now. So what kept y'all from going that path?
And so the question is, and Stephen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm hearing you right, your question is, you know, what made you decide to make the decision to not continue breaking the law and to not break the law anymore? Does that make sense? Is that right, Stephen?
There's a quote. I I don't remember who said it, but it says, change is inevitable and growth is optional. Change is inevitable and growth is optional. Unfortunately, a lot of times in our lives, change comes on the coattails of some pain, suffering, or loss. And for me, it was certainly the loss of my mother. A couple of years into my bid, that caused me to really start analyzing my situation and doing a lot of self-examination because I didn't want to continue to get the same results, so I had to change something. But change didn't come overnight. It came in incremental steps, small steps. You know, change doesn't come overnight. That's a fallacy. But the reality is that for me, the change that came in my life came as a result of really losing the person that was the dearest to me. And that caused me to really go another direction. And just like anything else in nature, in order for something to live, a seed has to die. Unfortunately for me, that seed was my mother. But as a result of her death, and the fruit that came into my life as a result of that grew out of that seed and brought me this far. And it's going to take me even further.
Yeah, it was pretty much the same thing for me. I had a realization. It was my father got out of prison in Florida and then stayed in Florida and lived in Florida. And when I was in CAIC Correctional, he died in Florida, and obviously he's out of state, so I couldn't go to the wake and all that kind of all that stuff. Then my grandmother passed away when I was in Mount McGregor, and because when I got arrested, I had a high-speed chase. The superintendent said, "Nah, you can't go." He said he's a flight risk. You can't go. And I was working for a chaplain, this Chaplain Pino, and she didn't know me that well, but she went to the superintendent and she fought for me to go to my grandmother's wake in Manhattan. So she was able to pull the strings and got me to go. And I remember going with the two COs, and I went to the wake, and they gave me a lot of space. They bought me cigarettes, they bought me pizza, the whole nine. So they gave me my space. And I remember thinking to myself, I could really make a move right now. Because my godmother was, on them. She like a social butterfly, so she's talking to them, distracting them so I could speak to my family unbothered by them. And I remember saying to myself, it was like epiphany. I said to myself, you want to keep like doing this or what? You make a move, and then you always run, and it just never ends, right? And obviously I didn't and went back, and that was like, for me, that was the epiphany. I was lucky enough to be in an environment that fostered that epiphany. That was Mount McGregor. I just happened to be lucky. Okay.
So, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
What made you change?
Oh, what made me change? At the time, I remember bidding, like, when I was in Comstock at the time, like, it was a lot of guys in there, they never come home. You got guys in there with 69 numbers, 1970 numbers, they never come home. So, me being around those guys, they was like, oh, when you get out of it, you only got 7 years, 82 months, that's nothing. When you get out, just, change your life, because I'm here forever. So that stuck with me to this day. To this day, it just stuck with me. They, I was always be around with them. We would study in the yard, and they was like, we never coming home. We never come home. So that stuck with me. Those older inmates, those 69 numbers, if y'all know what I'm talking about, 69, 1970s, they been in there. They ain't never coming home. So that stuck with me to this day. So that's what made me change my mindset as far as like, I can't go through it no more. I just keep on the right path and just keep doing what I'm doing and stay positive. That's it.
I also want to provide a little context to that question, because I appreciate that question. It's a question that comes up often, right? But it's a very individualistic question. Well, it's kind of very individualistic in the sense that it places all of the burden of responsibility on the individual while ignoring the environmental factors that influence people's behavior. And what that means is that in certain communities, the conditions can actually increase the likelihood that you will commit a crime. So what does that really look like, right? It looks like 24-hour pawn shops that say we buy gold, as if people from low-income neighborhoods have gold to sell at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? It talks about like, it's like, you know, liquor stores on every corner where the cost of alcohol is cheaper than a gallon of milk, you know, where police officers are actually robbing the people who are living in the neighborhood, you know, and, you know, and although people have choices to choose from, I can make a compelling argument that some of those choices have been already predetermined. So no matter which choice you go to, you're either going to jail or dead. And a lot of, you know, and some neighborhoods is really like that. And people, you know, even if not concretely, people feel like those are the only choices, whether like the educational system has failed them. I remember my 5th grade teacher saying, you know, you're going to be a good construction worker when you grow up. Meanwhile, I thought I was going to be an architect, you know, and you know, and what does that do to, you know, a 5th grader? So yes, you know, people do have individual choices, and no one held that gun but me, you know. But the factors that influence that behavior were outside of my control. Sometimes we look at homeless people and say, well, they should just get a job. Well, did you know that most homeless people actually have jobs? You know, and what if there are no jobs to choose from? You know, so I just also want to just provide that piece, and I appreciate you know, your responses, but for context, especially for the students, I also want to make sure that we place those responses within those contexts, because I can't tell you the number of people that I've seen come back into society to nothing, where everywhere they turn is a no, 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 no. You know what? I'm going to go hustle then. Like, what else am I supposed to do? You know, and so I just want to like kind of emphasize that. We have time for one more question. Yeah, can you just stand up? Or not. Just speak loudly, I'll repeat your question. I say I'm going to defer this question to Sean, because Sean, you can also, you know, talk about how it's closed now, but what made Mount McGregor, and then talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Mount McGregor is in Wilton, New York. It's, as Edwin said, by Saratoga Springs area. Mount McGregor's history is rooted in actually a priest by the name of Father Peter Young. He used to be a chaplain in Mount McGregor, and he started a, you know, it's interesting, Governor Cuomo closed Mount McGregor. However, Mount McGregor had the lowest recidivism rates out of any prison in New York State. However, it was one of the first prisons to close. You would think he would close a prison like Wyoming or Greene or Attica or some other nonsense. But he chose to close Mount McGregor for some reason. And what Mount McGregor did was it allowed, the concept was wounded healers, right? So it was prisoner-led, right, supervised by civilian staff. So we were in a dorm together, me and Johnny, and in that dorm, you couldn't smoke. I mean, you go to population dorm, you can smoke, right? But so we laid down the context, so we chose to live a civil lifestyle and an uncivil lifestyle. But that was through us and our relationship with our fellow prisoners, right? And that, you know, it affected change, right? It allowed people to take ownership for their lives. All the programs that were run, that were mandated by now DOCCS, but then it was DOCS, right, were run by us. So we did the civilian security officers' work. They were getting paid the salary. We were getting paid 14 cents an hour, but we did that work. And that ended up having the most change. And it showed, and the most people, and people who left that prison the least came back. It gave you an opportunity to own something and to affect your own change in your life. Roy, you want to add to
that? So to add to that a little bit, I was never in Mount McGregor, but I was in Clinton. I did almost 13 years. And in Clinton, in the annex, we had a program which was closed called Merle Cooper, which was a therapeutic program where we had community meetings 3 times a week. We had small groups 2 times a week, and it was mandated for you to be there at least 18 months. And as was mentioned, the people who were incarcerated there were like we would police ourselves. You had officers there, but it was a community. We were separated, isolated from population. We ate together. We did therapy together. We did counseling together. We challenged each other. We confronted each other. There was no talking in the day room. How about that? Like, to be in a prison where there's no talking in the day room, or you had guys blow you up, and then 3 times a week there was a red stool in the visiting room with 80 men, and you had therapists and psychologists that sat right there in the front, and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, someone had to sit on that red stool and tell their story. So, it was a therapeutic program, a self-help program where all the programming was created by the men who were there, and as well as, the people that were in prison. And I'll close with this, and that is, and we're guilty of, all of us are guilty of this at one point or another, but language, we got to be mindful of the language we're using. We're not inmates, we're not prisoners, we're not ex-cons, ex-inmates, we are people first. People who are incarcerated, people who have been intercepted by the system, people who are returning home from jails and from prisons. We are people because what we did don't define who we are as people.
Nice, thank you, Roy. Well, excuse me. So, I'm gonna. So 2 things are gonna happen right now, right? I'm gonna invite St. Francis College President Dr. Martinez to come up and say a lot of people don't know, but actually Dr. Martinez is actually a poet also. So we can't have a conversation about poetry without inviting him up. And then Nat is actually going to close us out with one of his new songs, and we're going to call it a day. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm going to pull rank and cut that out. But next time, we'll have the same conversation, the open mic edition. Thanks.
So how about we just move the chairs to the side? Oh. Good.
Now, hold on. Before you grab the mic, you got 5 minutes. Don't hijack the microphone.
Is this thing on? Oh, Johnny. So I do want to thank this crew for coming out. Got here a little late, but my sense is this is the kind of thing we've got to have in play to educate ourselves about what it is we do. I'm not ready to go. I'm just buying some time to see what the Rolodex throws out for me. Because Johnny didn't send me a note of, I got a dean up here. We gotta say we got the dean representative up here. He's always representing. But seriously, I mean, one of the things that I would say, and I say this a lot, is an issue of getting proximate. So I'm gonna try this piece. I haven't done this in a long, long time. So when I fumble, I'm gonna blame my Cuban compatriot over there. Did you just let him know? No, you showed up. You didn't tell me you were from St. Francis College either.
I said I did. You were late, so I told him that before you came.
All right, so this is a go at a piece that I wrote when I was working in Franklin Correctional Facility. So as Johnny knows and some folks know, I've been teaching inside for philosophy and poetry for some time, working primarily with males, adult males and some juveniles. And my background's philosophy, so here we go. Don't record this, brother. Listen, I tell the students it's important. We make our, we got to make our weaknesses irrelevant. I'm getting exposed myself right now, so I don't want to expose myself. So here we go with a little something to see if it comes out. When you grapple with a state of the exception, on an imaginary fact condemned to be both truth and deception, you dwell in a Rokian affirmation, reveling in or on the question. Is it resolution you seek? Is it a meek's life? Waiting, patiently debating what's ours for the taking right now. One can, if one wishes, steal a line from Eminem.
and attempt to lose oneself in the music, attempting to make the most of this opportunity that comes but once in a lifetime, could shift gears and embrace a Socratic dictum following a calling that tells us that the unexamined life is not fit to be called a human life. Recognizing this, we forego the I and embrace the we, even when consequences aren't consequences desired. Why? Because desire and desirable, although undoubtedly related, aren't equal. Like sugar and saccharin, they pose as substitutes only to those whose mindless affirmations are automatically generated. But, and I say but, what you might not consider is that freedom and potential resides in the most unlikely of places, where the courage to accept the philosophical burden is the burden and the difference between life and death, a burden accepted only by the courageous, neither the bombastic nor the iconoclastic. The courage to affirm life before death, holding tight to a dream, not as escape, but as a necessary drape that masks and conceals that which is revealed in the depths of our minds, and yes, our hearts, the heart disclosing discerningly what the mind cannot but know, telling us that we are not simply an actor in a contrived story written by somebody other than me. I am because I choose to be, choosing to live this life faithfully, determinedly, and honestly, even when the contradictory notes play in my head. I am because I choose to be, choosing to focus my attention on what I perceive to be the world's greatest need. Not because I think it's a life I ought to choose, but because it's a life that's chosen me. Not as destiny chooses unwittingly or as chaos chaotically creates, but as love makes manifest that I ought strive to live in love, however imperfectly, as if everything I do is of necessity. So I stand before you today, humbly, giving thanks that you've chosen to spend part of your eternity with me. Thank you very much.
This guy, he's a jerk.
Hello, hello.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
Hello.
I got a new song. It's called "Greatness in Me." It's not out yet, but we just performed this. We performing everywhere. This is my sister Fire.
Hi.
And now we gonna do this a cappella, baby. So yeah. So when I say greatness, y'all say in me. Greatness. Greatness
in me.
When I say greatness, y'all say in me. Greatness
in me.
Greatness
in me.
Let's go.
With that, Nick.
Yeah, greatness in me. These rhymes I speculate that people gon' fear. They wanna keep you shut. My thoughts is what they fear. Mental deeper than astronomy. Peep my philosophy. Thoughts are part of gold. People selling their souls. This one for the crack babies that never made it. Born blind, taking nothing for granted. Realize to understand and represent the underground. So I stay grounded. I pray for better days. Every night pray. The gun is my encyclopedia. Bullets and nouns. Verbs with the scope. Just trying to survive like the women and men that sleep in the train stations all over the nation with bottles and cans. And I fully understand it's hard to be legit, but I never quit. And I fully understand it's hard to be legit, but they're not equivalent to what I represent.
All I see is greatness in me. All I see is greatness. Greatness in me. Greatness in me. All I see is greatness. Greatness in me. Greatness in me. All I see is greatness in me. Within me. All I see is greatness in me. Within me. All I see is greatness in me, within me.
I do this with confidence, F they sponsorship. From pain to peace, it's been released. To Nority speaks, the gold dependent stain. Hope can maintain, know it's destined to be poor, so we think otherwise. It's a mass confusion, can't blind me with illusion. Divinity in my vision, turn off the television. It's an official music, who you think you talking to? My mind is the weapon, they said I wouldn't make it, so I had to make my own way. I wrote a bunch of great debaters, men and regulators. With soldiers and prophets, you can't stop the profit. Knowledge out deposit, you can't stop the profit. I wrote a bunch of great debaters, men and regulators. Knowledge out deposit, you can't stop the profit. Knowledge out deposit, you can't stop the profit. Knowledge out deposit, you can't stop it.
In me, within me, all I see is greatness. In me, within me, all I see is greatness. In me, within me, all I see is greatness. In me, within me.
Yes.
Big special thanks to Dr. Emily Horowitz for leading the post-prison program. You know, without this program, you know, there would be a lot of people who wouldn't have like to create this space. Special thanks to St. Francis College for creating the space to have these conversations. You know, big up to the Perez. But more importantly, thank you for the panelists. Sean Dalpiaz, Lazaro Lugo, where you at? Lazaro, thank you, man. Actually, this is one of many events where Lazaro has actually spoken, you know, publicly. So I just want to thank y'all, you know, and of course Natficial, thank you, because it's not easy to come up here and really bare your soul, and then know that you have to come back into the school. I wonder what they're gonna think about me now, things like that. And as a person who also goes to this school, I know what that means. You know what I'm saying? But I've had positive reactions from students that see more than just our experience. So I hope that, you know, your experience is the same. You know, so anyway, thank y'all for coming. Peace.